Hello, my name's Tim Oldham. I'm the CEO and Managing Director at AdAlta. In 2012, a young girl named Emily Whitehead in the US had suffered through 6 to 8 lines of chemotherapy for her leukemia, and her parents had essentially been told that there was no other options. They managed, however, to get her onto a clinical trial, and some brave clinicians at the Children's Hospital of Pennsylvania managed to remove some of her immune cells, engineer them in the laboratory so they now could see her cancer, gave those cells back to her, and she is now approaching 13 years cancer-free and is now studying medicine at the University of Pennsylvania. This breakthrough therapy, called CAR T-cell therapy, has transformed again our approaches to cancer. For the first time, we are now able to reprogram a patient's own immune system to help find and then destroy cancer. This is a living drug where a single dose is potentially curative. Now, the first successes resulted in approvals for blood cancers in 2017 and have really transformed outcomes for patients suffering from blood cancers. But 90% of all cancers are solid tumours. And at AdAlta, we're working incredibly hard now as the core of our growth strategy going forward to bring new hope to those patients suffering from solid cancers in the same way that patients with blood cancers already have amazing new options to treat their disease. And this is building on the back of an asset we had already developed now that's ready to commercialize in a totally different field of fibrotic diseases that represents the core of our past and has built us the skills that enable us to build this wonderful future in cellular immunotherapies. So moving into our story, AdAlta is a next generation cell and protein therapeutics company. We're growing our clinical pipeline through our east to west cellular immunotherapy strategy, which involves us in licensing next generation clinical stage cellular therapies from Asia and establishing a Western manufacturing and clinical platform for those assets. We're essentially Westernizing those assets, leveraging our unique skills, the advantages of the regional ecosystem, and a unique business model. This bridges the gap that exists today between incredible innovation happening across the region and the needs of Western biopharmaceutical companies and ultimately the patients who can benefit from these therapies. And our business is creating a series of capital efficient, short investment horizon assets. All of this builds on the skills we developed creating our first-in-class antifibrotic protein drug, AD214, which is being used to treat fibrotic diseases and for which we are continuing to work towards strategic partnerships that will enable the development of this asset to continue into phase 2 clinical trials and the value for AdAlta to be unlocked. So why our East-West cell therapy strategy? Well, I've talked about the incredible opportunities that these cellular immunotherapies, particularly CAR T-cell therapies, are creating for blood cancers, and the opportunity to extend that to solid cancers. The market itself didn't exist in 2017. It's projected to be in excess of $20 billion by the end of the decade. And by then, 50% of the revenue is going to come from solid cancers. But importantly, 61% of all clinical trials in this field are happening today in Asia. Asia is leading in the innovation and early clinical development of these particular assets. And this is a field and an innovation pool in which AdAlta can lead. We bring to the table some significant competitive advantages. Firstly, our ability to tap into the networks comprising Asia's innovation system in this field, together with Australia's world-class clinical and manufacturing ecosystem for cell and gene therapies, and our own expertise in pre-IND to clinical. A key part of our business is strategic sourcing. We've got a very disciplined asset selection process to ensure that we have highly differentiated assets with the maximum possibility of success in solid cancers, that they're differentiated not just from ordinary CAR T products or first generation CAR T products, but also that they have an opportunity to exceed the performance of other products in the pipeline and certainly existing standard of care. We offer a unique value proposition to our partners. Essentially, there is a gap between what Western biopharmaceutical companies are looking for and what Asian biopharmaceutical companies can offer. We provide those Asian partners with the funding and the skills and the capabilities to essentially bridge that gap. And in return, we are buying into a share of their asset rather than licensing it from them cheaply now. In that way, they get an increase in value significantly and early. We don't have to pay significant upfront, and all our investments go into developing the asset. The model, as a result, is capital light. We're making a modest investment in a manufacturing transfer and a single clinical trial in order to prepare for a potential exit event. This means we're looking at a 3 to 4 year cycle time for each individual investment. And as a result, the business is highly scalable. We've already secured exclusive negotiating rights for the first 3 assets in our pipeline. They're summarized very briefly on the right-hand side of this slide, but in essence, every single one of them is multifunctional and has a significant play on reduced manufacturing costs, which has been one of the challenges of products in this sector. This slide summarizes very quickly our business model visually, showing the progression of assets from Asia, particularly those in China where clinical data is available early, through Australia and into the major Western markets. So I mentioned our history and 8214. So there are 500,000 patients around the world today living under a death sentence from an insidious disease called idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. It's an orphan disease, but it's a large orphan disease. Patients describe this disease as having fear about where their next breath is going to come from. It's apparently akin to drowning. Unfortunately, despite spending $5 billion a year on drugs to treat IPF, patient outcomes remain a life expectancy of just 5 years from diagnosis. And that's because the existing drugs don't work particularly well and they have incredibly debilitating side effects. So there's a desperate need for new approaches. And AdAlta was able to use its proprietary technology to discover 8214 as a drug against a whole new class of biological receptors involved in IPF. We've developed and demonstrated its efficacy in multiple animal models of disease. We've successfully developed this asset through a phase 1 clinical trial, 2 in fact, and we've demonstrated clinically viable dosing regimens. Our next steps here are to generate clinical proof of concept or efficacy in a phase 2 clinical trial, and to develop a market-preferred subcutaneous formulation that will improve access enormously over the current intravenous version. We are actively seeking out licensing or third-party investments to unlock the next level of value in this particular asset, while we pivot our resources to building our next stage, clinical stage pipeline through our East-West cell therapy program. So in summary, we are a specialist next generation cell and protein therapeutic company focused on fatal diseases. We've secured the first 3 assets for our East to West cell therapy strategy. Our team and our network is in place with a capital light and highly scalable model. The next inflection points that investors should be looking for in relation to this strategy around the first flow of funds into our subsidiary company, AdAlta, that will run this strategy, as well as finalising the definitive licensing agreement on our first assets. I'd emphasise that we believe we can finance this strategy without recourse to additional funds from AdAlta's investors. We have active interests from a number of venture capital and high net worth family offices around the world who recognise the value of the innovation happening in Asia and the critical gap that we're filling to ensure that those innovations are made available to Western patients. And then, of course, we have 8214, our history from our own internal development, bringing a whole new approach to fibrotic diseases. We are actively partnering this asset today. We have continued to have a number of conversations ongoing in relation to this asset, and we will obviously be able to provide an announcement at an appropriate time once we've secured a partner for that asset. With all of that in hand, we believe that we are very attractively priced today, and we are grateful for the support of our major shareholders and indeed all of our shareholders who've enabled us to achieve this journey so far. I'm delighted to take any further questions either directly by email or through our Investor Hub portal on our website. And just to recap, we are on a very exciting journey to help bring new hope to patients suffering with fibrotic diseases, with the potential to monetize that asset very quickly, and in the future to bring the same kind of hope to solid cancer patients as has been achieved for blood cancer patients using cellular immunotherapies, tapping into the incredible innovation that's happening across Asia Pacific. And in breaking news, we've just announced that we have secured the first external investment into AdAlta, the operating unit for our East to West cellular immunotherapy strategy, with a commitment of up to $2 million from Synthesis Bioventures in a seed round and a right for them to invest a further $5.5 million in a Series A round. This is strong validation of and a vote of confidence in our East to West cell therapy strategy. We're now financed to complete the final evaluation and definitive agreement negotiation on the first 3 assets on which we have exclusive negotiation rights. We've launched a Series A round to finance AdAlta going forward, noting that we believe we can finance AdAlta without recourse to AdAlta shareholders if required. This is a really important announcement for us.